my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for checking out my video. This is a requested video on best practices for sight reading. And what I've got is a way of looking at sight reading that will give you a systematic formula to follow so you can get your best performance going as quickly as you possibly can in a situation where you're given a piece of music and you have to sing it right then and there. Before we get started, I want to thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. Subscribing really helps the channel, and I'd like to encourage you to do so now if you haven't yet already. There are also a myriad of other ways that you can support the channel, many of which are free, and they are in the description below this video. Okay, so let's have a look at our somewhat rudimentary, but nonetheless illustrative piece for sight reading practice. Have a look at it now. Now, I'm not going to show it to you for too long here, because what we want to do is take that away and then ask ourselves what we were able to learn from that first impression. What did we scan quickly in the first things? Did we get our key signature? Did we get our time signature? Were we able to categorize the melody in any appreciable way to help us? Did we notice the chords? And did that help us in identifying our key? Let's take another look. First things first. Most vocal melodies will be notated in treble clef. That's that scroll work there on the far left side of the music staff. The treble clef tells us how the notes are organized on the lines and spaces of the staff. The next thing you'll notice is a hash mark right there, and then the top line of our staff goes directly through it. This is a sharp symbol, and it's telling us that any F, any note designated as an F on our staff, is in fact an F sharp. Once we see that sharp symbol, we can immediately deduce that we are most likely in either G major or E minor. Now, let's take a look at those chords. We have a G, a D, a G, a C, and a G. That's pretty much G major. If you start with a G major chord and you end with a G major chord and you have a D major chord in there as well, keeping in mind that D major is the dominant of G major, make sure I said that correctly, or the 5 chord if you prefer, that pretty much identifies us as G major. Now you could still see a G major chord or a D major chord and be in E minor, but we would expect to see an E minor chord in there as well, and also, if we're really truly in minor, a B major. Oftentimes in minor we borrow the dominant from the major key area. So in E major, B major is the dominant, and that is frequently borrowed in the minor tonality. Now, all of this happens very, very quickly when we're scanning through this music, because usually in a sight reading situation we have a limited amount of time within which to digest the information and then begin to sing. The next thing that we would quickly look at are the melodies of the piece, and if there's any way we can, any patterns we can see, any way we can organize these melodies to make it easier for us to look at the big picture and be as accurate as we possibly can. Now, there are several videos on the channel about solfege, and when we think about these things in solfege, the pattern becomes immediately quite evident. Take a look. Here you have so, fa, mi in the first 2 bars, and you have so, la, ti in the next 2 bars, and then do from the 5th bar until the end. And so we can quickly figure out, oh, the first melody is descending towards do, the second melody is ascending towards do, and then we're done. We finish on do with our big 1-4-1 plagal cadence finish. Now, if you don't read music and you don't know solfege, that's going to be a lot trickier to do. And you're going to rely a lot on just the visual appearances of music without the specifics of either knowing the note names or knowing the solfege. For that reason, I would highly recommend that even if you just start now with the simplest little learning the notes on the staff for the treble clef staff, that step forward is going to really make sight reading, and I would make an argument that all of your musical pursuits will get that much easier and also give you that much more choice and higher quality overall. Reading music is not extraordinarily difficult, but it's a very flexible system, and those flexibilities make it somewhat complex. But you can do it, and it would really, really enhance your game, and it makes sight reading much, much more manageable. Now, in that first glance through the piece, now that we've got ourselves more or less organized, we're in G major, we've got our time signature. A word about that time signature, I glossed over it in getting to the key and melody. That's the next thing from the left that you see. You've got your treble clef, your key signature, which is an F sharp, which tells us G major in this case, and you have a 4 over a 4. This is not a fraction. That you will occasionally find information that suggests this is a fraction. If this were a fraction, it could be reduced to the numeral 1. And we can't do that in this case. The two numbers give us distinctly different answers to questions. The top number tells us how many beats there are in each bar of music. So you'll notice in the staff there, every while there's a little while there's a vertical line that separates one part of the staff from another. That's your bar marker, and it's telling you that in between each of those markers there are 4 beats. And the bottom number of our time signature tells us what type of note gets the beat. When there is a 4 on the bottom, that means that the quarter note, or if you prefer, the crotchet, gets the beat. This gives us an idea of how things are going to be organized, the timing of things, how the duration of these notes will feel. If it were 2-2, for example, cut time, where the half note gets the beat, then those half notes in bar 1, they would feel like the pulse, as opposed to feeling like they have 2 pulses contained within each of them. Now, speaking of rhythm, we get to bar 5. Let's take a look at that. Bar 5, now not by any stretch of the imagination the most complex rhythm ever seen, is still the most complex rhythm we have in our sight reading piece here. It is reasonably well syncopated, and bars like that, when we're getting ready to sight read something, we want to focus on them to make sure that we understand how we're going to execute the rhythm or notes or runs when we get there. Let's take a look at the counting of bar 5. Now you'll see I have the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. We have the big beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the off beats, all those and symbols. We are said to be subdividing the beat here. When we subdivide the beat, it allows us to be more accurate to the rhythms that we are seeing on the page. And if we clap the big beats and count on the numerals or and symbols where the articulations are, 1 and 4 and, then we get our rhythm just that quickly. Now, it can take a little bit of practice to get good at counting rhythms, but just like anything else in music, a little bit of practice every day, and before you know it, you'll be counting and creating rhythms that will be stunning and beautiful, and more importantly, will be either accurate to what you are asked to be sight reading, or will be best expressing the sentiments in the music that you are writing. So again, like reading music, I think learning to count and learning our rhythms is a really, really important pursuit that we all undertake. And in truth, if we're learning to read music, then we're working on rhythms at the same time. So those are the big practices that go into sight reading rather accurately. We scan quickly but calmly ahead through the piece, noticing any patterns, noticing key, time signature. If there are accidentals, like additional sharps or flats that occur, or there are notes that are part of the key that are not marked, such as the F in bar 4, we want to make sure that we take note of those things so that we're not caught by surprise. We want to focus on any potential rhythmical or melodic problems that may be in the piece. In this case, that's bar 5. And making sure that we focus on that and understand the rhythm so that we can accurately execute it will be very, very helpful. Organizing the other melodies quickly into understandable, digestible chunks means we can let those go. We know those scale patterns, and we can rely on our memory. Finally, when you've done all that, it pays to scan through again really quickly just to make sure that we haven't missed anything else. From there, we can play it if we want. So, fa, mi, so, la, ti, do, 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 do. Now, one brief word about chord sheets. If you are handed a chord sheet with lyrics and chord symbols and it has no other music of any kind, sight reading that is nearly impossible unless you already know the piece in advance, and in that case, it's not really sight reading. A chord sheet with just lyrics and chords doesn't have melodic information, so you have no way to tell what note you're meant to start on. It has no rhythmical information. You have no idea how long notes are held or what kind of rhythms are meant to be executed. For that matter, many chord sheets, it can be really, really difficult to even discern how long the chords themselves are meant to be held, much less what time signature the piece is in. In those instances, if you think that you're going to be handed a chord sheet, try to understand, try to know what the pieces are going to be in advance so you can adequately prepare. That's not really sight reading, that's just reading it off the chord sheet, and it may be that they've changed the key or something to that effect. But from a chord sheet, we can't really sight read. There's not enough information there to do so. And as always, I hope this helps. My name is Jeff. Take really good care of your voices, enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.